Chess friends, I hope you are doing well. Today, I am going to show you a brilliant chess gambit named the Queen's Gambit, along with some traps, tactics and strategies that I used against LeelaZero, a super chess engine with a performance rating of over 4000 Elo. She is currently playing in the Rating Brawl event on chess.com. I will illustrate all the chess traps and tactics that 90% people even doesn't know in the Queen's Gambit line. So, let's get started without wasting any time. I started the game with d4, LeelaZero responded with d5, and when you play c4, it is called the Queen's Gambit. Now, the Queen's Gambit is also a show by Netflix, which you can watch, but in chess, the Queen's Gambit is a very prophylactic gambit that can be played at both the Grandmaster level and even at the beginner level. If you are new to chess, then welcome to my show. You can even defeat higher level chess players, including intermediate players, and if you are a Grandmaster, don't expect that you can defeat Stockfish. Black has many lines in this position, as shown by my arrows here. First, we will look at the variation behind c6. This c6 move is very interesting because black can now consider e6 and g6, introducing the bishop to the g7 variation. After the knight moves to f6, you can now consider g3 to put your bishop on the g2 square. That is possible, but I put my knight on the f3 square, and when black plays e6 to open up the bishop's diagonal, you can put your bishop on g5, after h6 and the bishop moves back, instead of capturing the knight. Black might take interest in the pawn on the c4 square because if it's an unguarded pawn, why wouldn't you want to capture it? You can push forward your pawn and capture back, which is nothing serious. First, we will play e4 because the knight is pinned and e5 is coming to drive the knight away. Now, many chess players might consider playing bishop to e7, but that is not our approach. Black plays g5 here, which is a top-level variation even grandmasters consider. Of course, you wouldn't sacrifice your knight on the g5 square because the bishop can block it, and your e5 pawn can't do much better, after the bishop moves back. Black plays another prophylactic move, b5, creating a solid pawn structure on both sides of the board. However, the problem for black is that his pieces are passive, my pieces are also passive, so I need to castle. A few moves later, you can see that white can consider knight to e5, sending the knight forward to get a better spot to attack black. f4 could also be possible to open up the f-file, with the bishop and queen creating threats on the light squared diagonal, particularly against the f7 pawn. Therefore, after the bishop moves, you can capture the knight, and after the capture, the bishop gets an open diagonal. That doesn't matter because you have a sneaky move, bishop to d6. To seize black, at this point, black can't do much. After e5 happens, trying to open up some diagonals for the pieces, you can consider bishop to g4. You can see how the two bishop pair attacks black. Now, black has two main options, capturing the unguarded pawn. Most players can't resist a free pawn, or ignoring it. In the Queen's Gambit, you often sacrifice pawns to gain a positional advantage. Your knight is under attack, and what should you do in this position? Think for a moment. Of course, I wouldn't protect my knight. That's not my approach because I am like Stockfish. Let me consider e5, inventing a new chess gambit in the Queen's Gambit. The knight is under attack, and black might consider knight takes e5. Let me show you step by step. If any joker, including Levy, thinks of knight takes e5, then good job. I'll capture the pawn on d4, and black might become very happy seeing this move because the queen could face a discovered attack with knight to f3 check. Black becomes overjoyed, stands up from his chair, and dances after playing knight to f3 check, attacking the queen. After the exchanges, when my queen is lost, black thinks he's completely winning the game and is about to defeat Stockfish. But hold on my beer, let me play an interesting move, rook to e1 check. The king cannot move. And this is like a Mikhail Tal position. After the king moves to e7, there is no other choice. I will capture it, and later on, I can capture your bishop, and with one extra piece, I will completely win the game. The position is just over for black. Returning to the position, black realizes that capturing on e5 was a very bad choice. That's why many players here might consider capturing the knight. if you think that this capture is good and you can defeat me, let me break your ego by playing e6, attacking these vulnerable pieces. What should you do in this position? Black again has two main options, either knight to e5 or capturing the pawn. First of all, if you dare to capture the pawn, I can punish black with bishop to h5, checking the black king, and he will be checkmated in the opening. Instead of capturing the pawn, you might consider knight to e5, thinking it protects the position, but let me occupy and siege your entire inheritance with the law, playing e7, attacking the queen, and now all my lawyers are surrounding your wealth. Your queen can't escape, you will lose the queen, your property, your wealth, and everything. So, let me share an inspirational quote in sudden with you. Don't try to impress everyone, it's impossible, just be real, and the right people will love you for it. Alright, going back to the main position, which is the tactics behind c6, Leela considered e6, and this is the second variation I will illustrate for you. After the knight moves to c3, and the bishop to g5, bishop to g5 is a good move in the queen's gambit. After the bishop moves and the knight follows, h6 happens to attack the bishop, you should capture the knight, don't hold the bishop for too long if there is no weakness on the queen side. After the exchanges, e3 will follow. The plan is simple. Bring out your bishop, castle and activate your rook, that is your plan in the queen's gambit. After castling, we have rook c1 and c6 on the board. In this position, noticing that black has a closed center, I decided to play a very cunning move, which you can also use in your opening, and that move is pawn to h4. This move is crucial because you are threatening to play g4 and g5, attacking on the king side. That's your plan. Once you get the open g-file, why wouldn't you want to control it? After the knight moves, you can go for g4, here, black might consider g6, which is also a standard opening move, then you can push g5, attacking two of black's pieces. After the captures and recaptures, including the bishop capture and knight capture, you can see how my rook will get access to the open h-file. That's my plan. I am not going to castle and play normally like many players do. You can also consider f4 to push the queen away. Don't be afraid if the queen moves to g3 because it is alone, it can't do much. Even if the king moves, you have an open diagonal, and the queen can go there. You need to coordinate your rooks and queens on these files. A few moves later, you'll see that bishop to h3 arrives with the idea of attacking the knight. As the knight moves, the rook can capture and recapture. You should play rook h1 and rook g1 to gain access to these files. That's your approach. Even if the king moves and black tries to protect the h-file with rook h8, it doesn't matter. In the queen's gambit, you can often play h4 and g4 in some variations to open up the king side. Then you can push your pawn to f5, after the capture and your queen moving in, rook to f1 will arrive with the idea of attacking the queen. Queen to d3 check doesn't matter because, as I said, a lone piece like the queen can't harm the white king, which is powerfully secured. A few moves later, you can place your knight on e4, threatening knight to f6, supported by the bishop. Rook to h1 followed by rook to h7 could lead to checkmate, and that's your approach. How can black defend his position? Realizing his vulnerability, he might consider rook to h8 to defend this diagonal. Now, it's time to make a prophylactic decision. How can you expose black's king completely? You have the f and g files open, so how can you do it? The move is rook takes f7, sacrificing the rook. After queen takes g6 and the king moves back, you can play queen check, forcing the king to move again, and then you can recapture the rook. Eventually, rook to g7 will lead to checkmate, supported by the knight. The rook can deliver a decisive checkmate, the game will be over. That's your approach in the queen's gambit. Going back, we discovered that playing g6 was a very bad choice. In this game, LeelaZero decided to move the bishop back to e7, thinking I wouldn't play g5, but I surprised her by playing g5 anyway. I wanted to open up the g-file, and that was my approach. Leela responded by closing the position with h5, I moved my queen to c2 to get access to the diagonal. Bishop to d3 is also possible, after g6, I played bishop to d3 in the game. Here, black couldn't make any normal moves. For example, if your opponent plays something like a6, you can unlock your opponent's position with bishop takes g6. After the captures, black's king will be exposed. A few moves later, after king to f7, g6 will follow, and eventually, g7 will attack the rook. Black won't be able to protect it. I will regain my material, and even if black plays rook to g8, queen to g6 can lead to checkmate. The game will be over. Returning to the position, we see that any ordinary move like a6 would be bad. That's why, after king to g7, Leela tried to protect the pawn. I castled because black could no longer attack my position. Then I played f4, and after a few moves, I planned to play f5 and e4 to break open the center. Meanwhile, black played b5, trying to attack me on the queen side, but that didn't matter. I played c5, locking black's pawns on the dark squares, rendering black's dark squared bishop ineffective. The light squared bishop and knight became passive. How could they survive? After b4, I moved my knight back, and a few moves later, you could see my knight and bishop approaching the game. Even if e4 is possible, I could sacrifice my knight because black's king was completely isolated. None of black's pieces could protect the king. I played e4, and after some exchanges, Leela offered a queen exchange. I declined and played queen f3. Then I played f5, attacking black's pawns. How should you approach this position? If black captures my pawn on f5, the game will be over. After the capture, the king moves back, and after recapture, I can play queen to e3, threatening queen to e6, which would lead to a check. The rook would be under attack, and black's position would become completely vulnerable since the queen is not on the king side to help. I won't show you all the variations because I'm not your servant, I'm your friend. So, going back to the position, I discovered that capturing the f5 pawn with the e pawn was a bad choice. After a series of moves, I played a brilliant move. Can you guess what I played? Take a moment. I played knight takes h5, sacrificing the knight. After queen takes h5, I played queen h6 and f6. The position was just over for black. However, I didn't capture the pawn on h5 right away. First, I played f6 to check the black king. Then, I moved my rook up, captured the pawn, and delivered checkmate. Black's pieces were just too vulnerable, and they couldn't protect the king. I hope you enjoyed the Queen's Gambit traps and tricks, and I hope you enjoyed the game as well. Wishing you all the best. Bye bye, take care and see you soon.